The neon glow of the Pizza Palace sign illuminated the otherwise quiet street, casting a warm pool of light on the pavement. I parked my car, the aroma of freshly baked dough and melted cheese wafting through the air as I grabbed the pizza box from the passenger seat. The delivery instructions led me to a small, unassuming house nestled in the shadows. As I approached the front door, a sense of unease settled over me. The air was still, the night unusually quiet. I rapped my knuckles against the door, the sound echoing through the silence. After a moment, the door swung open, revealing a figure standing in the threshold. The man was tall and slender, his face partially obscured by the hood of his jacket. I greeted him with a friendly smile and held out the pizza box, the scent of melted cheese and pepperoni filling the air between us. He didn't respond, his silence stretching uncomfortably. I glanced down at the receipt to confirm the total, and when I looked up, I was met with the man's intense gaze. His eyes seemed to hold a darkness, a depth that was disconcerting. Clearing my throat, I told him the total, my voice wavering slightly. He reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a wad of cash. The bills were crumpled and worn, and as he handed them to me, his fingers brushed against mine. A chill shot through me, as if his touch had left an imprint on my skin. "Keep the change," he said in a voice that was low and raspy, sending a shiver down my spine. "Thank you," I managed to reply, my voice catching slightly. As I turned to leave, he grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. My heart raced and I tried to hide my unease as I looked back at him. "Can you do me a favor?" he asked, his eyes locked onto mine. I hesitated, the situation growing more bizarre by the second. Sure. What do you need?" He glanced around as if checking for prying eyes, his demeanor suddenly more urgent. "I need you to deliver something for me. It's important." My mind raced and I considered the risks of agreeing to his request, but before I could respond, he handed me a small envelope. It was sealed and unmarked, and a feeling of apprehension settled over me. "Just drop it off at the address on the envelope," he said, his voice a mixture of urgency and secrecy. I nodded, my curiosity piqued despite my reservations. He released my arm and I walked back to my car, the envelope burning a hole in my pocket. As I drove to the address, my thoughts were a whirlwind of questions. What was in the envelope? Why had he chosen me for this task? The address led me to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The air was thick with tension as I approached the entrance. Hesitating for a moment, I decided to follow through with the delivery, my curiosity getting the best of me. Inside the warehouse, the air was musty and cold. The only light came from a single flickering bulb overhead. I walked cautiously, my footsteps echoing through the empty space. In the distance, I saw a figure standing, their back turned to me. "Hey!" I called out, my voice wavering. The figure turned, and a chill shot through me. It was the same man from earlier, his hood pulled back to reveal his unsettling gaze. In his hand, he held the pizza box I had delivered earlier. "I appreciate your help," he said, his voice a strange mixture of gratitude and something darker. Confusion and fear gripped me, and before I could react, he opened the pizza box. Inside, nestled among the slices, was something that sent a shiver down my spine, an object that I recognized as a symbol of something far more sinister than a simple pizza delivery. As the truth dawned on me, I felt trapped, entangled in a web of secrets and danger. The man's gaze bore into me, and I realized that I had unwittingly become a pawn in a game that I didn't understand. And as the warehouse closed in around me, I knew that the night's delivery had taken a disturbing turn, one that would leave me questioning the choices I had made and the encounters that had led me down this unsettling path. The mansion's grand hall was adorned with shimmering lights and adorned in opulent decorations, setting the stage for an extravagant masquerade party. Laughter and music filled the air as guests in elaborate costumes danced and mingled, their identities concealed by masks that turned the night into a whirlwind of mystery. I weaved through the crowd, my own mask concealing my features as I soaked in the festivities. The energy was infectious, the vibrant atmosphere a stark contrast to the outside world's mundane realities. But amidst the revelry, an unease began to creep over me, a feeling that something wasn't quite right. I excused myself from the main hall and headed towards the restroom, hoping a moment alone would dispel my growing apprehension. The corridor was dimly lit, a sanctuary from the dazzling lights of the party. The door to the restroom stood ajar, and I pushed it open, stepping inside. The restroom was empty. the sound of the party muted to a distant hum. I approached the row of stalls, my footsteps echoing on the tile floor. As I entered an empty stall and closed the door behind me, a shiver ran down my spine, as if the air had grown colder in an instant. I turned to lock the door and my heart skipped a beat. A figure stood at the end of the row of stalls, partially hidden in shadow. The figure's costume was a riot of color and chaos, a clown's outfit that seemed out of place in the elegant setting of the party. A balloon was clutched in its gloved hand, the colors stark against the darkness. A chill settled over me as the clown's eyes, hidden behind its mask, seemed to fix on me. The balloon in its hand seemed to sway, its movement almost hypnotic. My breath caught in my throat, the unease I had been feeling intensifying into a knot of fear. I watched, rooted to the spot, as the clown's gloved hand reached up to its mask and slowly pulled it away. The face that was revealed was a grotesque parody of humanity, the smile painted on its lips curling into an expression that was both manic and malevolent. Its eyes gleamed with a hunger that sent a shiver down my spine. Without breaking eye contact, the clown lifted the balloon to its mouth and released it. The balloon floated upwards, the string dangling from its end. And then, with a sudden jolt, the string lashed out, wrapping itself around the stall's door handle, locking me in with a metallic click. My heart pounded in my chest and I fumbled for my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed for help. But as I brought the phone to my ear, a voice, the clown's voice, filled the small space, a whisper that seemed to come from all directions at once. "Welcome to the party," it murmured, its tone a chilling blend of amusement and menace. I backed away from the stall, my mind racing, my options narrowing with every passing second. The clown took a step forward, its form distorted and exaggerated, its presence an unnerving intrusion into my reality. With a surge of adrenaline, I pushed against the stall's door, my panic-fueled strength surprising even me. The door gave way, and I stumbled out of the restroom, my breath ragged, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. The corridor was empty, the party's music and laughter still audible in the distance. I glanced back at the restroom, but there was no sign of the clown. It was as if the encounter had been a macabre illusion, a nightmarish interlude that defied explanation. I rejoined the party, my heart still racing, my thoughts consumed by the encounter. The festivities continued around me, the masks and music creating a facade of celebration. But as I mingled with the guests, a sense of unease remained, a reminder that sometimes, even in the midst of revelry, there are shadows waiting to shatter the illusion of safety. The graveyard stretched before me, a somber landscape of weathered stones and fading memories. The air was still, the silence broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant chirping of crickets. I walked among the rows of graves, each marker a testament to lives that had once been vibrant, now reduced to inscriptions etched in stone. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale glow that illuminated the tops of the tombstones, while the spaces between them were shrouded in darkness. The shadows seemed to dance, as if the spirits of the departed were moving among the graves, their presence a mere whisper on the edge of perception. As I walked, a chill settled over me, a feeling of being watched by eyes that were no longer bound by the limitations of the living. The wind carried with it a sense of melancholy, as if the graveyard itself held the weight of the memories it contained. It was a place of reflection, a reminder of the fleeting nature of life. I came across a particularly old section of the graveyard, where the markers were weathered and the names barely legible. The air felt heavier here, as if the past lingered more intensely in this part of the grounds. I stopped by one of the graves, the name and dates obscured by time. I traced my fingers over the stone, a silent acknowledgement of a life that had once been, a connection forged across the barrier of existence. As I continued on my journey, a figure caught my eye, a silhouette that seemed to materialize among the shadows. It stood by a grave, its form indistinct yet hauntingly familiar. My heart quickened as I approached, the figure's presence both reassuring and unsettling. "Hello," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the quiet night. The figure turned towards me, its features obscured by the darkness. A sense of recognition settled over me, as if I had encountered this presence in a dream or a memory long forgotten. "Is there something you seek?" I asked, my words carrying a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. The figure's response was a soft sigh, the sound carried on the wind. It reached out, its fingers brushing against the stone of the grave. And then, as if compelled by an unseen force, the figure began to speak, a voice that seemed to come from a place beyond the realm of the living. "Remember," it whispered, the word carrying a weight that resonated within me. "Remember the stories that lie beneath these stones, the tales of triumph and tragedy, of love and loss. They are not forgotten, for they are woven into the very fabric of this place." I listened, the figure's words like echoes from another time. It was as if the graveyard itself was speaking, the memories of those who had passed on finding a voice through this ethereal presence. As the figure faded back into the shadows, I stood among the graves, the weight of the past pressing down on me. The moon continued its journey across the sky, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow on the landscape. And as I left the graveyard behind, I carried with me a sense of reverence for the stories that had been told and the lives that had been lived. A reminder that even in death, the echoes of the past can still be heard if one is willing to listen. The night was draped in silence, broken only by the distant hum of a streetlight and the soft rustling of leaves. I walked alone on the deserted street, the echo of my footsteps a lonely cadence that seemed to reverberate through the emptiness. The darkness held a weight that pressed against my senses, a reminder of my isolation in the heart of the city. As I walked, a sense of unease settled over me, a feeling that I wasn't truly alone, that unseen eyes were watching from the shadows. My pace quickened, my gaze darting from side to side as if seeking out the source of the disquiet that had taken hold of me. A figure emerged from the darkness, its movements fluid and unhurried. It stood at the edge of the streetlight's glow, its features obscured by the shadows that clung to it like a second skin. A sense of dread unfurled within me, the feeling that this encounter was not a chance occurrence but a deliberate convergence of fate. My heart pounded in my chest as the figure took a step closer, the sound magnified by the quiet of the night. It seemed to move with a strange grace, as if it was gliding rather than walking. My breath caught in my throat as a chill swept through the air, as if the very atmosphere had grown cold in response to its presence. I tried to call out, to break the silence that seemed to suffocate the world around me, but my voice faltered, trapped within my throat. The figure's gaze seemed to fix on me, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light that held a promise of both danger and fascination. As I watched, a whisper, a soft, almost indistinct murmur reached my ears. The words were impossible to decipher, a jumble of sounds that seemed to exist beyond the boundaries of language. But despite their incomprehensibility, they carried a weight, a meaning that resonated deep within me. With each step I took, the figure matched my pace, its form remaining just beyond the edge of the streetlight's reach. The tension in the air was palpable, a mixture of fear and curiosity that held me captive. I felt as if I was on the precipice of something both wondrous and terrifying, a moment that would forever alter the course of my reality. And then, with a sudden movement, the figure stepped fully into the light, its features revealed in a stark and unsettling clarity. Its form was human yet twisted, its limbs elongated, its eyes vast pools of darkness that seemed to draw me in. It regarded me with a mixture of familiarity and hunger, its lips parting as if to speak once more. The whisper grew louder, its cadence intensifying until the words were almost decipherable. They spoke of forgotten truths and ancient promises, of worlds beyond the veil of perception. The figure's gaze held me in thrall, its presence both mesmerizing and terrifying. With a jolt, the figure began to fade, its form dissolving like mist in the wind. The whisper grew fainter, its words drifting away until they were nothing more than a memory. The streetlight's glow seemed to expand, filling the emptiness with a soft radiance. I stood alone once more, the night's silence broken only by the rustling of leaves. The encounter had left me shaken, my mind a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts. I continued on my way, the memory of the figure's haunting presence lingering like an echo, a reminder that even in the emptiness, there are whispers of the unknown waiting to be heard. The cave yawned before me, a gaping maw of darkness that seemed to swallow the very light around it. The air was damp and heavy with the scent of earth, and as I stepped into its depths, a sense of unease settled over me, a feeling that I was intruding on a realm not meant for the living. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing the jagged walls that seemed to close in around me. My footsteps echoed through the silence, each sound amplified by the emptiness of the cave. The walls held ancient secrets, their surfaces etched with the marks of time, a reminder that I was a mere traveler in a landscape that had existed long before my presence. As I ventured deeper, the walls seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, as if the very stone was aware of my intrusion. The shadows danced on the periphery of my vision, casting eerie shapes that seemed to move of their own accord. My heart raced, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the cave itself was a sentient entity observing my every move. A distant sound, a soft rustling, a whisper of movement reached my ears, and I turned, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. But there was nothing to be seen, only the cold stone walls that seemed to encroach upon me. I took a shaky breath, my grip on the flashlight tightening, and continued my journey. As I rounded a bend, the cave opened up into a chamber, its expanse stretching beyond the reach of my flashlight beam. In the center of the chamber lay a pool of water, its surface still and reflective, like a mirror into the depths of the earth. But as I shone my light on the water's surface, a ripple spread, as if something had disturbed its tranquility. My breath caught in my throat as a shape emerged from the water. A figure, its form distorted and alien, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. I stumbled back, my heart racing, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. The figure advanced, its movements sinuous and unnatural, as if it defied the laws of physics. I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing through the chamber, the sound magnified by my fear. The walls seemed to close in around me, the air growing colder and heavier with every step. I felt as if the very essence of the cave was conspiring against me, as if its darkness held a malevolent force that sought to ensnare me within its grasp. The figure pursued, its footsteps silent, its presence a constant pressure at my back. I dared not look back, the knowledge that its eyes were fixed on me sending shivers down my spine. The passage seemed endless, a maze that twisted and turned in on itself, a reflection of the chaos within my mind. Finally, I stumbled out of the cave, gasping for air as I emerged into the daylight. The world outside seemed vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness of the cave. I turned to look back at the entrance, but there was nothing to be seen. No sign of the figure that had pursued me. The cave stood silent and unmoving, its secrets hidden within its depths. I knew that what I had encountered was beyond human understanding, a presence that defied explanation. As I walked away, the memory of the pursuit haunted me, a reminder that the world held mysteries far beyond our comprehension, and that sometimes in the shadows of the unknown, something watches and waits.